to the last panel, of course, with the superstar, with the queen. I'm already putting you under pressure. The first question, a question that I think you have answered a number of times, but again, you didn't just play the game. You set a standard and you carried the game on your shoulders for a number of years. Describe your journey.
Well, this is a difficult question you started off with, describing such a long journey.
The new ball is the toughest to play.
Well, I think, looking back, it's been a roller coaster of a ride. When I started playing, how the resources were, and playing under a different organization, and then coming under the BCCI wing and seeing a change which has helped the growth of women's cricket. And in the last 4 or 5 years, to see that growth going, through leaps and bounds into culmination of the first ODI World Cup for India. What do I talk about? What women's cricket was and where it is today. There are so many former cricketers who've laid the path, even for me to take up a sport in 1992 when I started. And then coming under BCCI, and then the infrastructure was different. It did help the cricketers. There's a little bit of a longevity now for women cricketers. Earlier it was just around late 20s that you could expect a career for a women cricketer to end, but now there are a lot of women with the inception of leagues around the world that you can see them playing till the late 30s, maybe touching 40s. I think that's where the sport right now is, and then you can also see the standard, how it is improved from one generation to the other. I think that is a better way of explaining it. From 150s, now they are scoring to 200. They're able to, in the one days they're touching 400. I think that with years and with time, with the evolution of the sport, it's quite admiring to see that the sport now can be called a professional sport. A lot of girls taking it up, and you don't really necessarily have to worry about how do you put food on the table when you're coming from a very humble or modest background. A lot of parents show a keen interest when the girl is showing interest in pursuing cricket, and there is no more ignorance among people or in the society for women cricketers.
Well, as you put it, but you have named a number of things. I'll add it to it, the visibility, the packed stadiums. What is the most satisfying among whatever you mentioned, to see this improvement? What has been the most satisfying part of this whole, change that has happened?
I think accepting women's cricket for a sport that it is. Yes, we did had to fight a lot despite coming under BCCI, and games slowly started to televise. So obviously the visibility started to grow as well. But to actually get people to the stadium, get women to follow cricket in our country, and I think a huge credit to BCCI and the former Secretary Jay Shah for actually launching Women's Premier League. Perhaps that was the impetus required for women's cricket to push to another level, and then within 3 years we were able to see the first silverware, where we have our India on it, and I'm sure we'll get more of it. But I think I could see the strength in how Women's Premier League has grown from one season to the other. Just not in visibility, just not pulling the crowd, but overall in terms of the domestic players getting a go again, because not everybody gets to play for India, but you have another go at challenging or getting up to pushing the selectors to have a look at you through the Premier League as well.
Absolutely. And since you spoke about the silverware, 2017 you were there, 2005 you were there, but 2005 probably was, you were still getting accustomed to the whole captaincy thing and all that, but 2017 was pretty heartbreaking. 2025, I remember when India won the World Cup, Mel Jones came to you and congratulated you. You were going down for your show because, of course, you're a broadcaster now. And the first thing you said was, a monkey off my back, you know? Take us through that moment when you were not watching the game.
Well, monkey of the back is because you just reminded me of 2017. That's what everybody talks about. But now you don't have to revisit that World Cup. I think that wound is pretty much healed with the 2025 ODI World Cup, at home. And yes, 2005 was very different. It was my first assignment as a full-time captain for the Indian team, and then leading the team into the first World Cup final appearance. It perhaps has made us realize that we just are not there to compete. Given the right sort of preparation and the resources and infrastructure, Indian team is very much capable of beating the best. Because 2005 we've beaten the defending champions in the semi-final, New Zealand. So that realization was 2005. 2017, yes, there's a huge, about 12 years between, and then completely different set of players. 2017, looking back, it was not the skill that, we lost. It was more about playing to a full-packed stadium, which we were not, used to, and you suddenly are playing at Lord's, and then there is the entire world is sitting up and going to watch the World Cup final, which perhaps that is, we couldn't really absorb that pressure. I think that's the change WPL was able to bring to the girls, is that now they are so used to playing in front of a packed stadium that it is their second skin. They don't really get overwhelmed with the situation. Coming to the 2025 World Cup, there was so much of, buzz about, eventually we would win because it was our cup to win when we've beaten Australia in the semi-final. And then, I was hurrying down, and you are the one who reminded me that, Jones has said this. But yes, I didn't see the last few overs because Chadni was leaking runs. She got hit for 2 or 3 boundaries, and I was like, India always has a way of, getting that pressure back onto us when we feel that the match is pretty much in our hands. He's like, no, you shouldn't make it easy for anybody. So that's why I was sort of walking in the corridor. I didn't see the last few overs until the stadium, until I could hear everybody scream and shout that, we finally won, and there was claps around and the roar of everybody in the stadium, and I realized, I think we finally crossed the line.
You brought the World Cup to that podium, India being written on it, a big dream. You do not like saying this, but I'm sure you were emotional and you had a tear in your eyes for sure.
Well, I mean, yes, it is a very emotional moment then, for just not for me, but for all the former cricketers, because we've always felt that the ICC tournaments are a platform where we have, the biggest percentage of turning people to watch the game, because if we put up a good standard and showcase, good standard of cricket, I think we will be able to improve or increase the fan base for the sport. And finally, when we won the ICC ODI World Cup, and that too at home with so much of pressure. It's never easy to play World Cup at home, and then you go on to get your hand on the trophy, for which, I mean, for years all of us were dreaming of getting India there. And then I felt it was a very surreal moment to have former cricketers in capacity of broadcaster or in the crowd turning up for the final, and then the current generation of players, performing what it was required to win the World Cup. It just felt that everything was, it was time for India. Yeah.
Well, while we are celebrating the ODI World Cup, what do you think, or which area do you think that we can still work on? Also, probably, we are not acknowledging enough, even though we are celebrating the trophy per se.
Well, I think for any change to happen, it takes some time. There is a journey in it. As much as we talk about our first ODI World Cup, it took a while. It took time for women's cricket to be where it is, and similarly even for men's cricket, from say 1980s to winning our first World Cup and then the T20 World Cups. What I believe as society and as people is that not to sort of compare generations and compare the sports, and just to enjoy watching women or men play a sport. That's what I would love the society to do, and rather than comparing the skill aspect or any other aspect of it. When we talk about the sport in general, what do you think that we need to improve on? I think India in the last 3-4 years have been really good in terms of the one-day format. We are getting closer to the T20 World Cup. As World Cup champions, what I would love to see India is to dominate world cricket. And for that, I think we need to be a little more consistent in winning even the bilateral series, because that's how you sort of stamp your authority and your dominance globally, which Australia did for the longest time. And I would definitely want India to do, and also expand the bench strength. Yes, we do have few players now. We can say that we have about 20-25 girls, but I would like to see a lot more girls competing for that for the senior team. And then you do have the under-19s, the T20 under-19s who play the World Cup once in 2 years. I would like to see a more structure where they are able to progress and just not get left behind once they represent India in the World Cup, because I've seen few girls from the first edition not really picking it up, where you see that like the likes of Mohammad Kaif and Yuvraj Singh coming through the ranks from the under-19, and I would love to see more of that in the women's game.
Since you spoke about the T20 World Cup, India in T20s recently has defeated England in England. And 2-1, we won that series. And again, 2-1, we won in Australia, the T20I series. So how confident are you for the T20I World Cup?
Well, I think the Indian team is doing really well in terms of picking themselves up when they lose a game. I think that's really good, because that is something, that area for the longest time, I think we were not able to make a comeback after a loss, but now I see that they are far more stronger mentally or in their preparation. But again, T20 is a format where even a low-ranked team can actually beat you on a given day. One day is a little longer, so you still have a second go at if you happen to lose the momentum during the game. So I'm sure that the Indian team is preparing well for it. They've recently got a new SNC coach I've seen few clips of it where he's making them run. That's a good thing. You would want the girls to be in a very good fitness condition to take on the best teams in the T20 format. But if you ask me the chances, we do still have good chance, as you mentioned, that we were able to beat England and Australia in England and in Australia as well.
Well, you already spoke about probably which is one area that in a tournament like a World Cup is something that you have to get right as a team. Because in the ODI World Cup, we did take a little time to get things, working. But as you just said, T20 is a game which is very fast. You might not get a lot of chances. Plus, India is in tough group. You have South Africa there, you have Australia there, both competitive teams, other than qualifiers, of course. But yeah, so what do you think that one thing that India should get right from the word go in the World Cup?
Well, I think the composition of the team, because one day World Cup, we've all spoke a lot about the sixth bowler, and then finally into the knockouts, India got their composition right. They're playing 11 right. That is something I would say that you get your playing 11 right. You perform, the players do well or not. That's in nobody's hands. So, in the sense the girls put in the effort, you put in your hard yard, expecting to do well. Sometimes the matches don't go your way, that's fine. But as long as you are, from your end, putting the best 11 feeding the best 11 in the team, hoping that, this is the right combination, this is the best combination. I think that's what India should, that is one thing that I feel that they should do, because as I said, in terms of their mental preparation and skill, they are very good.
Do you see shades of leadership in this group that reminds you of your era, or is this a very different group?
Well, it's definitely a different group, and I would not want to, as I said, compare generation to generation, because every generation has their strengths, and then based on the evolution in that generation, that's where that generation steps up. So I can't really compare back then and now. And leadership itself has evolved over the years. From what we perceived captaincy or leadership is to what it is now, whether it is in corporate world or in sports. It's a very different concept of leadership and captaincy. So definitely the current lot is, they do have leadership skills, each one of them, because that's how unless you lead yourself, you won't be able to lead a group of players. So, and then we've seen some very good match-winning knocks from players, and that goes to show that they are ready to lead with their performance on the field. So everybody do have glimpses of a leadership in them.
Well, from the player and captain, let's move to the other hats that you wear, The first one being commentator. So from this transition from being a player to a commentator, how difficult is it? Like when you're in the commentary box, are you still thinking, so-and-so should have been there in the field? That fielding had to be this side. Or, oh, come on, you had to step out to that ball. Does that bother you?
Well, initially it did. I mean, and I would tell myself I'm watching it, and I've been there. But it is for those players right there in the field to find their groove, find their space, and it's pretty easy to talk, right, when you're watching, but there you have split seconds to make decisions. And so that's why I'm not too critical about it. But then, yes, it took a while for me to understand that I'm this side of the screen now, and I'm here to enjoy the current lot playing and showcasing the best standard of sport. But then, when it comes to the batting side, it still pinches me that most of them don't really use their footwork, and I feel that they could do a lot more, score a lot more runs, But then, yes. As the evolution of the sport is, I think all of them are finding their own individual way to score runs.
In the recent, the Sri Lanka series, I have seen 2 Sri Lankan batters actually came up to you and were having a chat with you. One of them actually is performing pretty well, not giving you the credit for that. But I'm just saying, so when people approach you and probably ask you about how to go about playing the game, or something of that sort, how do you handle that? What do you tell them? Because, as you said, now the game is a lot more evolved and a lot different.
Well, I very rarely get into the technical aspect, because every player has a very different technique, and we are, as players, we are pretty touchy about our own techniques. I focus more on how do you prepare your innings and in the mental aspect of the sport, not too much into because as you said, the Sri Lankan players with very less exposure, how do you give them inputs? If someone who's played like 100 games, obviously they have the experience of the 100 games, and you're able to give them very simple techniques or simple pointers, and they're able to absorb it. But someone who's played this 30 games, the experience and exposure is very less. So what sort of pointers are you going to give them? You try to keep it very, very minimal and simple for them to understand. And if it is during the tournament that you want certain things to change, then you don't feed them too much of information. Keep it very minimal and see if they're able to do that. And if it works for them, I think it is great, because you feel nice when players perform, when they're trying to get off the slow faces. If you're able to help them, I think in that sense, my experience comes to the foray. Yeah.
Again, now I'll again get back to commentary. So generally people think that commentary is all about just talking on the game. But What does the prep look like? You know, say for example, a pitch report prep in Hindi.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people have, enjoy me talking in Hindi and giving a pitch report in Hindi. And most of them said that, I've really improved since the first time that they heard me speak in Hindi. When I moved from a player to a commentator, like everybody else, I thought it is a pretty easy job. You just have to commentate on the sport that you've played for so many years. But then, doing it live, and then in few seconds to express your thoughts over the action, it is challenging for any cricketer to sit on that chair and talk. It took me a while to grasp things how to be done, and looking at the seniors also in the commentary box who've done it before, giving me certain advices, and I was speaking a little bit along with them. So, but then for women's cricket, I think it does help when you know the players and you've been following them, you've played with them, so you know a lot more than the cricket that they're playing. So you can add that a little bit and make it more entertaining for the viewers.
What about the names? Remembering so many names, is it a trouble?
Well, it is, because I'll tell you honestly, when you lead for 17 years, and that happens to be about 3-4 generations, and you can understand how many players I've come across in the domestic and international level. So it's human tendency that you don't remember many of the names. But yes, I'm working on it, and I'm sure that I'll improve even there.
But when you talk